I left home with $100, a backpack full of dreams, and a heart full of determination. I returned years later with $100 million and a mind filled with memories of every struggle, every setback, every success. But despite everything I'd achieved, they still didn't learn. It's hard to explain how it all started. Some stories have a clear beginning, a set of neatly defined moments that mark a before and after. But mine wasn't like that. My story wasn't about a single decision. It was a collection of tiny, almost imperceptible choices. The type of choices no one notices at the time, but in hindsight, are the very things that shape who we are and where we end up. I didn't grow up in a mansion or have a silver spoon in my mouth. I wasn't born into a wealthy family, nor did I have connections that opened doors for me. What I had was ambition. Ambition so raw and untamed that it almost burned me from the inside out. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about proving to myself that I could be more than what I was. More than the environment I was in. More than the people who said I couldn't. That night, when I packed my bags with $100 in cash and a few essentials, I didn't know exactly what the future would hold. I didn't have a grand plan, just a relentless drive. I boarded a bus heading toward the city, the heartbeat of opportunity, the place where people like me went to build something out of nothing. The city was a jungle, a chaotic, bustling metropolis where dreams were made and broken every single day. But that's what I loved about it. The unpredictability, the challenge, the idea that if I could survive here, I could survive anywhere. The first few months were tough. I found a small apartment in a sketchy part of town, furnished it with a couple of second-hand pieces, and settled into my routine. I worked odd jobs, bartending, washing dishes, doing anything to pay the bills. At night, I would sit in my small apartment, staring out the window at the city lights, wondering how many others were like me. People who came with nothing but a dream and a drive to make something of themselves. I'd often think about how easy it would have been to just give up, to go back home to the comfort of familiar faces and a predictable life. But that wasn't an option for me. I wasn't going to be another person who left and returned with nothing. The journey wasn't smooth. I faced rejection after rejection, sometimes from jobs I knew I was qualified for, other times from people who didn't think I had what it took. But with every no, I grew more determined. I remember one particular night, after being turned down for a position at a tech startup, I sat in my apartment feeling utterly defeated. I couldn't help but question my decisions, wondering if I had made a mistake. I didn't even have enough money to buy a decent meal, let alone afford rent for the month. But then something clicked. I realized that my circumstances didn't define me, my actions did. I didn't need a job from a company to prove my worth. I could create my own opportunities. So, I sat down at my old laptop and started brainstorming ideas. I knew a little about coding, a little about business, and a lot about determination. What if I could build something from scratch? A platform? An app? Something that could change the way people interacted with the world. The specifics didn't matter at that moment. What mattered was the belief that I could make it happen. I spent the next few days putting together a plan, scraping together whatever resources I could find, and working on the prototype. It wasn't pretty. In fact, it was rough around the edges. But I didn't care. I just needed to get it out there, to test it, to see if people would use it. I posted about it on social media, reached out to people in tech forums, and begged a few friends to give it a try. Slowly, the feedback started trickling in. Some people loved it. Some hated it, but that was the beginning. Months went by. The app wasn't exactly a hit, but it was growing little by little. I kept refining it, improving its functionality, and listening to my users. I spent hours coding and learning from my mistakes. Each failure felt like a step towards success, and each small win felt like a validation of my belief that I could do this. Soon, I began to attract the attention of investors. I remember the first meeting with a venture capitalist like it was yesterday. I was nervous, dressed in my best suit, but still a far cry from the polished entrepreneurs they were used to seeing. But something about my passion, my raw determination, resonated with them. They saw potential in what I was building. That was the turning point. With the funding, I was able to hire a team, scale the product, and expand into new markets. The app, which had started as a humble idea, began to take off. People were using it, sharing it, and talking about it. The media took notice, and suddenly I was being invited to speak at conferences, interviewed by major outlets, and featured as one of the ones to watch. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. I was doing it. I was living proof that you didn't need to come from money to make money, that you didn't need connections to create something valuable. But even as the business grew, even as the dollars and accolades poured in, there was always a part of me that felt disconnected. The people I left behind hadn't changed. They still saw me as the girl who left with nothing but a backpack. They were proud of me, in their own way, but it was almost as if they couldn't fully comprehend what I had achieved. They didn't understand the sacrifices, the late nights, the countless failures. To them, I was still that person who had left home with $100 in her pocket, and nothing had really changed in their eyes. It was at one of the family gatherings that the weight of this realization hit me the hardest. I had just returned from a business trip overseas, and I was meeting with old friends and relatives. Everyone was gathered around, chatting and catching up, and the conversation eventually turned to my success. Some congratulated me, but others couldn't help but make backhanded comments. "You got lucky," they said. "You always had that one idea that took off. You're still the same girl you used to be, just with more money now." It stung. I wanted to tell them about the sleepless nights, the debt, the sacrifices. I wanted to show them the scars I had earned on my journey. But it was no use. They didn't understand, and perhaps they never would. I tried to brush it off, but deep down I realized something crucial. Success, in the eyes of some people, was measured in terms they could understand. Money, fame, and recognition were all they could see. But they didn't understand the essence of what I had built. They didn't see the hours of effort, the relentless pursuit of a dream, the countless moments where I wanted to quit but didn't. They only saw the shiny exterior, the result of years of hard work, without knowing the story behind it. As the years passed, my business grew to a global scale. I expanded into new sectors, launched multiple products, and became one of the youngest entrepreneurs to amass a fortune in the tech world. But despite my success, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being underestimated. Even as my wealth surpassed $100 million, I wasn't satisfied. Not because I wanted more money, but because I wanted recognition, not from the world, but from those who had been there at the start. The ones who doubted me, the ones who didn't believe. The truth is, the money didn't change me. It didn't make me a different person. What it did was give me the freedom to do things my way, to make decisions without fear of failure. that the real transformation happened in my mind. I had learned how to take risks, how to embrace failure, how to rise from the ashes of my own mistakes. That was the real wealth, the knowledge and resilience I had gained along the way. In the end, the thing that hurt the most wasn't the struggle or the journey itself. It was the realization that no matter how far I went, no matter how much I achieved, there would always be people who couldn't see it. They would always see the past, the girl with $100 in her pocket, and never the woman who had built something from nothing. But that was okay. I had learned that the only person who needed to understand my journey was me. Because when you've gone from $100 to $100 million, it's not about what others think. It's about what you've become.